Good afternoon, friends and enemies. We are here for the Week 15 running back fantasy preview. We're going through every single game and letting y'all know every fantasy relevant running back and where they fall into the buckets this week. We've got the must starts, we've got strong starts, dub flex, L flex, and the cone category. All right. Every fantasy relevant running back is going to fall into one of those just based on how I feel about them. All right. Whether or not I want them in my lineups. This is a full slate of games. We got no teams on bye. Everybody's in the fantasy playoffs. Some of y'all have buys, so you get to sit back, relax, tuck your shirt in. You don't have to yell for a week, but a lot of y'all have to grind it out. We got to grit it out. Therefore, I am here for you. All right, every single Wednesday, we are doing this video. Every Thursday, we are doing the wide receiver version of the video. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to hear what I have to say about every single running back, wide receiver. Let's get it. Week 15. Starting off with the Thursday night football game, the Rams and the Niners. We've got San Francisco at home, 2.5-point favorites with a 49.5-point over under. On the Rams side of things, you just continue to chug out Kyren Williams. This Rams offensive line is getting healthier and healthier. The Niners are still looking like they're going to be without Nick Bosa, still looking like they're going to be without Trent Williams. So you've got problems in the trenches again for the Niners. I think Kyron's going to get another 20 touches. I think he's a good chance to score a touchdown. I don't know his line off the top of my head, but I imagine he's probably close to like minus 170, minus 180 to score a touchdown in this one. Kyren must start. On the flip side of things, San Francisco, we do still have some moving parts here because Isaac Guerendo is dealing with that midfoot sprain. They have not ruled him out. There is still a slight chance that he could play. If he does play, I like the matchup. The Rams' run defense is nothing to shy away from. They are 25th in terms of EPA per rush rank. They are 19th in terms of fantasy points per game allowed to the running back position, but it doesn't really matter all that. I think Isaac Guerendo would just be a good start. He'll lack a little bit of explosiveness. He will be at a higher re-injury risk here, so he definitely falls down into the dub flex category for me because it's a little bit of a scary overall situation. If he does not play, Patrick Taylor becomes the running back that is on my radar here. He's going to fall into the dub flex category because I think he will end up seeing 60 to 65% of the overall opportunities in this backfield. Typically, Shanahan likes to ride one running back here, and I think it will be Taylor. He severely outsnapped Keyshawn Vaughn. Izzy Abanikanda has not been active yet with the team, so while it might be a little bit of a committee, I still think Patrick Taylor probably takes the full role there and performs pretty well with it. So I am good with Guerendo if he's active. I'm good with Patrick Taylor if Guerendo is inactive, as dub flexes with probably a little bit of strong upside there. So we move on to the Sunday slate. We've got Washington, 7.5-point faves against the Saints. 43.5-point over-under in New Orleans. The Saints' run D is a travesty. They are dealing with injuries at every level of every side of the ball. So for Washington, Brian Robinson, this is like the nut matchup here. Brian Robinson would be a must start for me. No one behind him. I don't know who's going to get the work. Is it Rodriguez? Is it McNichols? It looked like it was Rodriguez last week. Eckler's still on the IR with the concussion. Kind of scary hours there. But yeah, B-Rob gets into your lineup. The other two dudes, it's a good matchup. Maybe they get some run behind B-Rob because they get ahead heavily and don't really have to throw the ball. They would definitely be in the cone, maybe L-flex category for me. On the other side of things, Alvin Kamara, of course, is a must start. Kendre Miller's interesting, though. He got double-digit touches last week. He scored a touchdown, nice little touchdown run. This was the fourth time this entire season where a running back has seen 25% of the snaps not named Alvin Kamara. Jamal Williams did it a handful of times, but that is an insane number. Kamara has been an 80% plus snap player in pretty much 80% of their games. Now, I think like the sentiment around Kendre Miller was building up all week or all weekend last week, and I don't think it should have been a huge surprise that he got a little bit more involved. But he's not a pass catcher. I'm not sure what's going to happen on the goal line, but it's clear that they will use other players on the goal line outside of Kamara. They showed it with Taysom Hill. We've seen it at times with Jamal Williams when he's been healthy. So Kendre might get some goal line work. He'll get a decent amount of carries. This is not a scary Washington run defense, 27th in run D rank per PFF. So again, dub flex, L flex for me, both categories involve players that I think are flex worthy. Dub flex is guys that I'm comfortable and I feel good about having in my flex. L flex would be dudes that I don't feel good about, but I think they are on a path to being viable for fantasy this week. So that being said, I'm going to throw Kendre into the L flex category. Moving on to Cincinnati, Tennessee. We got Cincy -5 on the road in Tennessee, 46.5-point total here. Cincy's offense is just flying with sparks in every aspect here. Chase Brown, of course, is a must start and a league winner at this point. Tennessee, on the flip side, Tony Pollard's played really, really well. It's tough to see what kind of efficiency or upside he really has when Tajay Spears is on the field, but he really hasn't made an impact. So for me, Tony Pollard in this matchup is great. EPA per rush rank for Cincinnati is 29th in the NFL, 22nd in run D rank per PFF. So they're not a scary matchup whatsoever. They've been without and will continue to be without a handful of their defensive tackles, which, leads way to these running backs just seeing open holes. And we saw what Rico Dowdle did to Cincinnati on Monday Night Football there. So Tennessee, Tony Pollard is a strong start bordering on must start. I think he's probably closer to a must start for me. You just don't know what you're getting from the Tennessee offense when Will Levis is under center. Like we saw them put up like zero production against a Jacksonville defense last week. So even when you're saying, oh, Cincinnati's defense is straight cheeks, it's like, is Will Levis good enough to overcome cheek-type defenses, all right? That's a question you need to ask yourself. Can Will Levis overcome the cheekness? So, Tony P, it doesn't really matter. He's going to be in your lineup. Strong start, must start, in between. Tony, figure it out in the graphics. You can do what you want there. Miami and Houston. Miami, 3-point underdogs on the road in Houston, 47-point total. Now, I saw some beat reports today. We don't have practice reports as of this recording, unfortunately. For the wide receiver one, we will have a little bit more information on, the overall teams and offenses for this week. Miami might be without both of their starting tackles in this one, and they're already a bad run offense. They have a ton of trouble grabbing any sort of efficiency on the ground this year. That being said, Devon Achane is obviously a must-start. He gets it done in every aspect of the game. Mostert was inactive last week with a hip injury. I don't know if he's going to end up playing this week. We'll have to keep an eye on practice reports. With him out, Devon Achane saw 5 goal line carries. Was unable to convert on most of them, but it was good to see him just clearly take that role when Mostert was out. So his upside is crazy, but I think it will cause some issues for this Houston offense if the Miami offense is, or I should say Miami offense, if Miami's offense is out without their tackles, you're talking about a team in Houston with some serious, hungry fucking edge defenders that get to the quarterback. So that can cause some issues for Tua, but it might lead to just needing to get the ball out really, really quickly. And that's the one thing that they've done really well this season, which has led to a ton of receptions for Achane, a ton of receptions for Jonnu Smith. So we could see even more of an emphasis on that type of style for the Miami Dolphins in this game. So, of course, Devon Achane must start. Houston, on the flip side of things, of course, Joe Mixon is a must start. Moving down, we got KC and we've got Cleveland. KC -4 on the road, 45-point total here. At this point, Kareem Hunt's obviously in the cone category. Pacheco getting more and more work, but we're not really seeing him put it into production. So I want to say until we really see, Pacheco get back into a comfortable fantasy player for us, he's going to ride out his days in the L flex category for now. Cleveland's run defense has been a lot better than their pass defense. As you could see, they still have the #1 ranked run defense per PFF, have allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to the running back position on the year. So Cleveland, relatively stiff on the ground, all right? KC, extremely stiff on the ground. We already know that. We've known that the entire season. Better against the ground than they are against the pass. #1 in terms of fantasy points per game allowed to the running back position. #3 in EPA per rush rank. Nick Chubb has really done nothing for us. He's been okay for fantasy, actually, if you just kind of threw him into your lineup week in and week out. Haven't looked at the efficiency numbers, haven't looked at anything but the box score, because he's gotten into the end zone a few times. But this is, one of the toughest matchups that you could find on paper for opposing running backs. Jerome Ford has also played a lot of snaps, ran a lot of routes, played way more than you'd like to see if you are a Nick Chubb fantasy owner. So both Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford are going to fall into the L flex category for me. I think Ford would probably be actually closer to the cone category for me. Nick Chubb would be in the L flex. Don't feel good about him, but he will probably get double-digit touches in this one. Dallas, Carolina, I think you just got some two studs right now, the way that they're playing, two of the hottest running backs out right now, and you just see a ton of green across the board down there. Carolina is actually favored for the first time ever while Bryce Young is starting. 2.5-point favorites at home, 43-point total here. Chuba Hubbard must start with Jonathan Brooks out. Rico Dowdle, I think at this point, the amount of involvement he has, how good he has looked, how explosive he has looked, just his involvement on all 3 downs. Rico, for me, is also going to just fall right into that must-start category. So you got 2 plain, clear, must-start running backs in that matchup. In a matchup that we don't have anything clear here is the Jets versus Jacksonville. They are in Florida. The Jets are 3 point favorites, 40.5 point total in this one. So look sloppy all around, but two defenses that you could definitely take advantage of. If Breece Hall misses, which I'm kind of expecting at this point, I don't really see a reason for them to rush him back, but obviously a lot of moving parts. If Breece Hall plays, he's going to fall into the probably dub flex category, as much as I hate to do it, as much as I feel like that's a mistake. He's going to be a dub flex. The other two are going to be cones. If he does not play, though, we have this clear split backfield between Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen, the two rookies here. They split everything last week. They split carries. They split targets, receptions, routes, 2-minute drill, long down and distance, short down and distance. Everything was 50-50 across the middle, which I actually think speaks more to Isaiah Davis than Braylon Allen, because you kind of expected Allen to be, 60-70% of most of those categories, whereas it started as a 50-50. And I would say Davis outplayed Allen to the point where we might actually see Davis usurp him 55-60 in favor of Davis. So I actually probably feel okay about both of them, to be honest with you. I think I would go as far as saying that both of them would be closer to dub flexes for me than they would L flexes. Both of them got 14 to 15 touches. Both of them, I think, will have scoring opportunities against this terrible Jacksonville defense. So I'm okay starting either of them. If I had to take one or the other, I would take Davis, especially in PPR leagues. I know they had, nearly the same amount of targets and receptions last week, but I think Davis is more equipped. His play style is more equipped for a higher PPR type ceiling. On the flip side, you got Jacksonville with Tank Bigsby coming back and just clearly taking over the RB1 slot. Last week, ETN, the better pass catcher, getting more pass catching work. This is a game that I don't think the game script will get away from either side here. So I do think Tank will get a healthy volume, whereas Travis Etienne, if he's getting 3 to 5 carries a week, it's kind of useless outside of a huge play or like really high volume passing work, which I don't expect. So Etienne will be an L flex. Tank Bigsby for me would be a dub flex, almost bordering on strong start, but I'm going to keep him in the dub flex category for the time being. Baltimore and New York. Yeah, Baltimore's 14.5 point favorites on the road in New York, 43-point total here. Derrick Henry must start, obviously. Behind him, I guess with the absolute thrashing that they're probably going to give the Giants, I don't hate the idea of some sort of, secondary running back getting way more involved than we expected. And right now, it's obviously Justice Hill. Justice Hill's snap counts over the last 3 weeks. Week 13, 49% of the snaps. Week 12, 40%. Week 11, 52%. And running upwards of 60% of the routes. Now, obviously, you have to ask yourself, running the routes, does that help in this game? Probably not, because they're not going to have to throw the ball. Like, Lamar might throw the ball sub 20 times in this game, just dominating the game script here. But I do think there's just an avenue where you don't feel the need to give Derrick Henry 30 touches in this game. So maybe Justice Hill gets, 7 or 8 carries and 3 or 4 targets in this one. So I'm going to put Justice Hill, and maybe I'm big braining this way too much, but I'm going to put him into the L flex category. On the flip side, Singletary is going to be a cone for me. Extremely tough matchup. Tracy, ton of opportunities. He's running really well, but the Giants have now lost, I think, 2 more offensive linemen, John Runyon and someone else on their O-line. So they're down a ton of O-line power already. They are down their quarterback, so Drew Lock is starting again. Drew Lock runs the ball probably too much for good fantasy running back production. The Baltimore offense is going to suck up an extreme amount of time. They will not have any game script, but the one saving grace here is Tyrone Tracy had 10 targets last week. I don't know if enough people know that, but he had an insane number of targets last week, and I think we could see a game where he sees that again. And this is a passing defense in Baltimore that you could take advantage of from any aspect of the field. So Tracy's going to be a dub flex for me in a really bad matchup. Normally in a better matchup, obviously, I'm going to be enthusiastic about him. He's going to be in the strong start, if not must start category, but I'm going to go dub flex for Tyrone Tracy, one that I feel really, really good about. Indy versus Denver. Indy's on the road. Denver's 4-point favorites at home, 44-point total. I'm just straight up going to say every Denver running back, you have absolutely no rhyme or reason as to who's going to have the game, when they're going to have the game, why they're going to have the game. You are going to shoot yourself in the foot trying to guess if it's Jaleel this week. Is it Javonte? Does Audrey Estime randomly get more involvement this week? They're all going into the cone category for me. I don't care. It's not because all of them are going to end up having bad games, but it's because there's a very high likelihood that you just choose the wrong one and end up having a 0 in your lineup. So fuck them. Fuck the entire Denver backfield. Indy, on the other hand, Jonathan Taylor, you just keep riding him out there. The production has not been there week over week over week. We haven't seen a lot of breakaway plays from him. We'd like to see a few more touchdowns from him. But coming off of the bye, the offensive line get a little more healthy. JT, what are you going to say? He's not a must start. Of course, you're going to start JT in your fantasy playoffs. Moving to New England and Arizona. Arizona, 5.5-point favorites, 45.5-point total here. This is a game that I feel really good about hitting the total on. All right. I think I am 4 or 5-0 on New England Patriots over-unders. In matchups like this, where both offenses are better than both defenses, and neither defenses is like a stopping sort of defense, neither defense is one that's going to, force the other team to put up 16 points or whatever, I love hitting the overs. And this continues to happen in New England because New England's offense is way more high-powered than their defense is. So when they get in matchups like this, love hitting the over. I already nailed it on Pickett. I threw a couple parlays up on there. I think I took New England and Arizona over. I took a few more, and you guys can go follow me on Pickett. It's pretty much like a social betting app, social betting website where you could follow dudes like me or anyone in the office, see what our bets are, whether it's on Underdog, whether it's on any sort of like sports book. You can trail our picks. There's literally a copy bet feature on the Pickett app, and it's free to download the Pickett app right now. It'll be linked down below for you. And if you use the link down below, it'll automatically take you to, I think, Guts' profile, but you could find me under his like following tab there. So you can see Guts' picks, you can see my picks, you can see what I have coming for the upcoming weekend. We got 4 green weekends in a row, all right? We have 4 weekends in a row in which we are in the positive. We hit an $1,800 parlay this weekend. Shout out to Gut for that one. But yeah, go follow me on Pickett. You will see what I have already up in the early slate for some player props. You will see what I have for game slips. And this is one of them because I like both sides of the offenses here to outplay both sides of the defenses. For New England, you have Ramondre, who has been relatively up and down. I think he'll have a good day, so I'm going to throw him into the strong start category. This is not a defense that I am worried about in the slightest. I think you could throw Antonio Gibson into the L flex category as well. On the flip side, you got James Conner, who is a strong start for me. Great matchup against New England's front, and he's just a dude that has not really worn down. Typically at this part of the season, it feels like James Conner starts to lose a little bit of steam, but it doesn't feel like they've needed to put the ball into the hands of Trey Benson or Amari DiMarcado too much right now. So James Conner, strong start, steam ahead there. I would not start either of these secondary pieces for Arizona. Moving down to Tampa Bay and the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers at home, 3-point favorites, 45.5-point total here. I think a lot of the Chargers' success on offense is going to hinge on whether or not Ladd McConkey plays. Did not play last week, even though he looked like he was shaping up to play. Didn't. So that kind of tells me that he probably should be expected to play in this upcoming week. It's a great matchup against the Tampa Bay defense. Now, in the backfield, we have Kamani Vidal finally jumping Gus Edwards in terms of snaps. Outsnapped him 53 to 47% of the snaps last week. Gus Edwards did get the goal line score. He is zero explosiveness, zero target catching ability at this point. Gus Edwards is an L flex for me in a good matchup. Kamani Vidal, I'm going to throw him into the L flex category as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has some ceiling. He's an L flexer with some ceiling here because I do think we're going to see him get more carries, more targets, a little bit more upside in this matchup. We saw the second half of last week's game for Kamani Vidal is where he emerged. Gus Edwards out-touched him, I think, like 5-1 in the first half last week, but then Kamani Vidal led Gus Edwards in the second half last week. So I think we're going to start to see a trend where Vidal gets more and more involved. Again, though, I don't want to throw him into my lineup right away. He's an L flex for me right now, but I could see him getting into the dub flex category next week. I also heard on a podcast today, this again might be kind of overthinking things, and a lot of people that own J.K. Dobbins, a good chance that they just put him into the IR slot. But J.K. Dobbins has come out to the media a few times being like really, really aggressive, saying that he very much plans as soon as he's off of IR to play in week 17. So take that for whatever it is. He might come off the IR in week 17. It's going to be extremely tough to trust him and want to play him in week 17 in your fantasy championship. But if you got the IR spot open and someone dropped him, I would go grab J.K. Dobbins just in case on the off chance there. So Kamani, Gus, both L flexes. I like Vidal better, and I think Vidal has a little bit more upside here. On the flip side, you got Tampa Bay, Bucky Irving dealing with the hip injury, the back injury. He's dealing with a lot of injuries right now that don't scream confidence in him playing this upcoming week. Here's what I'll say. If he does play, I'm going to start him. He's been too good not to. And obviously, he has the re-injury risk, which we just saw this previous week. But we also had 3 or 4 weeks prior to that where he continued to be on the injury report, continued to be DMPs throughout the weekday practices. and then stepped up onto the field and then put up 20 to 25 fantasy points. So if he plays, he's going to be in my lineup. He's going to be a dub flex. I also think Rachaad White, even though this is a very tough matchup, like you could see a lot of orange, a lot of red down there, I still think Rachaad White and Bucky are so involved in the offense that both of them would be dub flexes for me. And that has almost proven out every single week. When them two are on the field together outside of last week, they put up fantasy points. So if Bucky plays, that's how I like that lineup. If Bucky does not play, Rachaad White is going to get into damn near must-start category for me. His pass-catching floor is so high. He's going to see 12 carries plus, probably get a decent amount of goal line work. It does start to beg the question of, like, where do we put Sean Tucker? Sean Tucker is going to be an L flex for me. I don't feel comfortable putting him into my flex category or into my flex spot in my lineup, but wouldn't be surprised if he gets a goal line carry or two. He's dealt with some fumbles this year, which is why I don't think we're seeing that much out of Tucker. Like, they're having a hard time trusting him right now, obviously, and every game is super important for Tampa Bay as they are now the favorite to win the NFC South division. So with Sean Tucker, he's going to be an L flex, but you can flex him if Bucky is out because they clearly want to use their running backs at a very high pace, and they like giving it a committee type of feel back there. Next up, we got Pittsburgh and we got Philly. Philly, 5-point favorites at home, 42.5 point total. This feels like a game without George Pickens that both teams are going to just use the ground game over and 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 over again. Now, I'll probably address this more on tomorrow's video when we do the wide receiver version of this. The whole, like, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts beef thing. That's just another, like, TikTok, Twitter clip where a dude, like, some cornball, like, Dove, whatever the fuck his name is on Twitter, takes a clip, takes it out of context, and everybody runs with it. That was just not what actually Brandon Graham said or what he meant by what he said. He did not say that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown were not friends or were friends and now they're not friends. He was saying the situation changed because they were friends before A.J. Brown came to the Eagles, and now that business is involved. There is a different – I'm not explaining it to you. Just fucking use context sometimes when you see clips. Like, dive a little bit deeper. Watch the full clip before you start just saying erroneous fucking things on podcasts, in the media, on Twitter, etc. Whatever. Either way, Saquon Barkley must start. On the flip side, Najee's been great. However, the Philly defense has been greater. Greater sign Philly defense. Going to get a lot of work. Without George Pickens, they're going to have to go so heavy to their running backs here. And I don't know why I'm doing this right now, but I'm in the mode, so we're just going to keep letting it rock. Najee is going to be a dub flex for me. Again, extremely tough matchup. He's been schizophrenic in the passing game. Like 2 weeks ago, I think he had 5 catches. Last week, 0. So all over the place. They're going to have a tough time sustaining drives, I think, because what they do is they carry it on first down, carry it on second down, and then hope that Russ makes a big play on third down. That ain't going to happen against this Philly defense. All right, so I think they're going to have trouble sustaining drives. So Najee would be a dub flex for me. Jalen Warren would be an L flex for me. Next game, we got Buffalo, Detroit, game of the week for show. They got a 54.5 point total in this game. Detroit, 2.5 point total, 2.5 point favorites at home. Here's what I'll say here. The James Cook rushing yard line is at like 50-something yards. Detroit, when they're healthy, they are probably the toughest run defense in the NFL. Maybe KC's above them. They're not even close to healthy right now. You know, we already know that Hutchinson's out. DJ Reader was out last game. They had 2 other defensive linemen out last game, and then they lost their best run defensive tackle in Aleem McNeil to a concussion. So he's in the concussion protocol. There is a world where Detroit is on their 3rd string D-end and both interior defensive tackles, which basically makes the strong point of their defense, right? They're without Malcolm Rodriguez. They're without Alex Anzalone already at linebacker. There's a world where their strong suit becomes a really, really weak focal point of this defense, which leads to a ton of carries for Buffalo. I think there's a world where Buffalo ends up going into this game extremely run heavy. So one of my favorite props for this week, assuming Aleem McNeil does not clear concussion protocol, we will keep a very close eye on that. James Cook, his rushing yard higher, will be one of my favorite plays of the week. Again, to see what I pair that with, you're going to have to go follow me on the Pickett app, but I love that. So James Cook is going to be a must-start for me regardless. You're never sitting James Cook. Detroit, of course, Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, both must-starts for me. Buffalo's defense is like good, but they can be absolutely fondled on the ground, all right? 28th in terms of run D rank per PFF, 30th, so 3rd most fantasy points per game allowed to the running back position this year. You're starting all 3 of those dudes. You know, Buffalo's secondary pieces have played well, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, but you can never actually predict when they're going to do anything, so they're both going to go into the cone category for me. We've got 3 games left. Sunday Night Football, Green Bay, Seattle. 2.5 point favorite for Green Bay. on the road here, 45.5-point total. Now, there is a very weird aspect to this game for Green Bay and Seattle in terms of the weather. And I don't have any hard, concrete evidence of it yet, so I'm not going to bring it up now. I'm going to bring it up in tomorrow's video when we get to it in the wide receiver version of this. So, again, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll talk about it then because it affects the passing game way more than it affects the ground game. Because when I think about the ground game here, Josh Jacobs is, of course, a must-start. He's been electric week in and week out over the second half of the season. Seattle, Kenneth Walker dealing with these injuries. If he's out, Zach Charbonnet, we saw what he did last week. He is, of course, a must start. I think if Kenneth Walker plays, there's just no way that Charbonnet does not see half the workload right now. I honestly think both of them, I might even start Charbonnet over Walker, as crazy as that sounds, because he's probably going to be at less than 100%. Let me see if we have any update on Wednesday practices from Kenneth Walker. Yeah, we don't have an update on K-Dubs yet. The calf ankle injury, though, any of those like muscle injuries make me a little bit nervous that it's going to be multi-week. So I think there's a good chance we see Charbonnet, and he's going to fucking light up the box score for you in fantasy. So he'd be a must-start for me. So we have 2 Monday Night Football games this week. NFL always on some shit, so here we go. Just killing the East Coasters. We have an 8 o'clock kickoff and then an 8:30 p.m. kickoff. Why can't you just do like 6 and 9 at that point already, all right? We're going to be up till fucking midnight. Like, spread them out so we can watch both games. Chicago at Minnesota. Minnesota 6.5-point favorites here at home. 43.5-point total. Minnesota, one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Of course, you see a lot of red down there, which makes the Chicago matchup really, really difficult. Again, though, Swift is going to be strong play if Roschon Johnson continues to miss time here. He did not clear the concussion protocol yet, but typically when you're on your second week in the concussion protocol, you won't clear until like Thursday or Friday for whatever reason. So I think there's a decent chance that Roschon ends up playing. If that's the case, Swift would be a dub flex for me. Roschon will be a cone for me. Minnesota, Aaron Jones, is a great player, continues to get it done. It's sloppy, but Chicago's defense is abysmal versus running back. So Aaron Jones is going to be a very, very, very strong start for me. Not starting anyone behind those two, though. Last game of the slate, we have Monday Night Football, Atlanta at Las Vegas. Falcons are favorites, 44-point total overall. Bijan, of course, is a must-start. This is a game where I think Algier will be an L flex for me. I absolutely hate starting Algier, putting him into lineup at all, unless we know that we're going to dominate game script. I think a lot of this will have to do with Desmond Ridder. If Desmond Ridder is under center, it looked like Aiden O'Connell was going to be out for an extended period of time. Now, all of a sudden, it's like 50-50 that he might actually play this week. If Aiden O'Connell's under center, obviously that gives the Raiders a lot higher of a chance of staying competitive in this game. Ridder is straight ass cheeks. And, yeah, the revenge narrative, I think, is going to go in the opposite favor of Ridder. It will not be a strong point for him. So the game script can go really, really heavy in favor of the Atlanta Falcons in that case, which would put Algier into the L-Flex category for me. For Vegas, we have Sincere McCormick. We have Zamir White on the IR. We got Madison, who's been limited, but they will not play that man. They will not let him play in games or be active. So don't know what's going on there. If it's Sincere and Amir Abdullah again, Abdullah is going to be cone for me. Sincere would be, he's getting a lot of work, a lot of opportunities. That being said, I don't feel good about having him in my lineup. So he's going to be a flex-worthy player, but I don't feel good. So he's going to be the L flex for me. Getting a lot of early down work. We'll see if he gets the goal line work. He did get one vultured from him by Aiden O'Connell, so he could have had a touchdown. Not really seeing any pass catching work because that's Amir Abdullah's role. This offense cannot sustain drives, but the Falcons are fucking so bad on defense that they might be the problem solver for that particular problem here. So Sincere, he's going to go into the L-Flex category for me, but he's probably like the highest ranked L-Flex player on the slate this week for me. All right. Madison plays, that makes everything really, really messy, obviously. And Sincere would still stay in the L-Flex category for me. The other two would end up being cones. And that's going to wrap it up for the RB preview. These are going to be long videos because we got no teams on bye over the next 3 weeks, weeks 15, 16, 17. I will continue showing up for y'all, obviously, though, to make sure that we bring home the hardware. I love you for hanging out with me. Subscribe to the channel if you are fiending for the wide receiver version of this, okay? Make sure you go download the Pickett app. Free to download, free to use code BDGE, which will send you to our profiles. You can tell whatever we are taking this week. Good luck in your fantasy first rounds, and I'll see you tomorrow. Smoke cheese.